step out.
Alright. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Team OTK channel. Today we have a deck profile for you. Just so you know, this is a proxied version of the deck until the release comes out in July. But I've been playtesting with this deck, so let's get into it. So, for those who haven't paid attention, I am going to be playing Gear Chronicle. For the starter, when he comes out, I will be running Chronojet Dragon. Why? Because I'm a hardcore Chronojet stan, and he's one of my favorite units in the game, and was a Gear Chronicle player in G era. No other reason why. For my grade 3s, which are the main backbone of the deck, for Chronojet Dragon. He is a grade 3 force, twin drive, 13k power. His main skill is, during your turn, during the main phase, discard a card, superior ride a grade 4 from the deck. At the end of the turn, retire that unit, rewrite a grade 3 from Soul, and that's how that goes. His other ability, though, that can be used on Vanguard and Rearguard Circle is Counterblast 1. He gains 5k, and your opponent cannot use Sentinels when he attacks. Now, what makes him probably the better superior ride out of the 3 is because of him having a Rearguard skill. This makes him more versatile in combat, and with his support that comes out of the next stage set, this is really going to push the deck forward. And since we run a superior rider and he does grade 4s, the first grade 4 I run at 1 copy is Metallica Phoenix. Metallica is a grade 4, triple drive, 15k. The only skill it has is it cannot be written from hand. So, virtually all you're doing with him is he's your first superior ride if you go first. If you're going second, you pretty much ignore him altogether unless you really need to. But more often than not, I haven't had the reason to run into him. You can run it, boost him up to 2. Some people do, due to the fact of you might accidentally draw into him early. But most often or not, you only really need 1. The other grade 4 of the deck is 4 Chrono Dragon next stage. Now, he's a grade 4 twin drive, 15k attack. His skill is auto on Vanguard Circle. At the end of the battle that this unit attack, discard 2 cards from hand, and if you have a Chronojet Dragon in Soul, superior ride, and that Chronojet Dragon gains 50k till the end of turn. And at the end of turn, you cannot superior ride into another unit. Now, I will talk about that in text first because it's important. Because of how this deck works, and how the superior ride mechanic works in Gear Chronicle, this text makes sure a Gear Chronicle player running Chronojet does not lose. Because at the end of turn, if you don't have anything in Soul to ride, that will actually kill you on its own. So it's saying you cannot re-ride at the end of turn. That helps keep Chronojet's skill from killing itself. Now, the other part of his skill being the 15k and Chronojet and Soul's really good because in Premium, this card can be used as a one-of during either late game or really early game. Because there have been some Gear Chronicle units that help Soul Charge, but not by much. And it actually pushes. Now, this guy can only be used when your opponent's at grade 3, so he's not something you can abuse turn 1, which is why we run Metallica Phoenix. But what makes this card probably the most fantastic grade 4 Gear Chronicle has is the factor of he's not restricted to the superior ride mechanic. So, for instance, say you're on your turn 3, you've been on grade 3 for a turn, but you have no grade 3s to discard. Instead of discarding 3s to superior ride into him, you can literally on your ride phase just ride into him and his skill will go off no matter what. That alone makes this a versatile card, and it actually helps make my decisions on other cards I run in the deck. Now, since you've seen the 3s and 4s, let's get down to the 2s. Probably the most flexible slot in the deck, outside of 4 cards. We do run 4 Smoke Gear Dragon. He's a grade 2 interceptor, 5k defense, 10k attack. He has 2 abilities. His first ability is auto on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When this card attacks, he gains 15k. Now he has a second effect during this when he attacks, as if he's on a rear guard and you rolled a grade 4 this turn, you Soul Blast 1 and get to draw a card. But that's not why you run this card. His main effect is during your turn, when your Vanguard is Chronojet Dragon, any card you discard is considered a grade 3. Now, what this means is Gear Chronicle for Chronojet does not have a discard fodder requirement anymore. Everything you discard while this is on the board is free. And he's mainly one of your main attackers during your turns. Most people will target this out, but more often than not they'll ignore it because they'd rather kill you before they'd rather kill you, knowing that killing this, if the game's gone long enough, won't mean anything. The other grade 2 I run is Threeercob. For those of you who are new, Threeercob's skill is at Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, counterblast 1, discard a card, and give your Vanguard +1 drive. He has the exact same skill as Blaster Dark if your opponent's field is empty, but instead all we gotta do is counterblast discard. His second effect is like the grade 1 discard fodders. When discarded, he counts as a grade 3. This is probably one of the best first ride targets you can hit, especially if your ride up isn't finished. But he's also good on rear, but more often than not, I usually just ride him as a Vanguard to save my other pieces for later in the game. I also run, that will be coming out of the Chronojet trial deck, 2 Strooboscope Dragons. His ability is on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, auto, at the end of the battle this card attacked, Soul Blast 1, discard a card, retire a unit on your opponent's Rearguard Circle. And if your Vanguards are grade 4, you may draw a card. That end portion of the ability is only when used as a Rearguard. It doesn't really help early game. Late game though, it can help recur your hand. As well as if this is your grade 2 ride, you sort of can shut out your opponent's board early. This has actually helped me a lot against some matchups. My last grade 2 I run is 2 Naboo. Now, Naboo is one of the best cards in Gear Chronicle as a rare. For what she does is, when she attacks, I may bind a card in my drop zone, and if I do, she says you cannot use grade 1s or higher. Now, this helps with Chronojet because the deck more often than not is going to run Force 2 instead of Force 1 because the multi-attacking. And Crit 2 in a multi-attack deck is scarier. But also, in this deck, it sort of needs help with Soul. But because the offensive and defensive options are kind of tight, I only run 2 to make space so she can refill my Soul for 1. But she also doesn't get in the way of me having more versatility in my unit use. Now into the grade 1s. I run 4 Steam Breath Dragon. Steam Breath Dragon is our grade 3 searcher. So like all grade 3 searchers, he has a skill on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle. When it's called, when placed, look at top 5, look for a grade 3. If found, discard a card, shuffle deck. That's a good effect. This deck really needs that since you only run 4 grade 3s. But his second ability is auto continuous on your turn. If you discarded a card this turn, at +5. So virtually this card's always going to be a 13k booster once you get to after the turn grade 3 turn. From that point on, this will always boost for 13. It actually makes a pretty devastating column with Chronojets because a 26k column swinging plus an extra 5, so making it a 31k column, crit 2 with no sentinel, that more often than not will force 2 cards out of my opponent's hand. And that pressure can be kept up rather frequently. The other grade 4 I run that is probably going to be the most staple card in all of Gear Chronicle until the end of time is Chrono Tooth Tigger. Now, if you played Chrono Fang, I don't have to really go into it, but for those who are new, Chrono Tigger's ability is at the beginning of your ride phase, draw a card if he's on your Vanguard circle. Meaning, if you rode him on your turn 1, on your next turn before you ride again, that's a +1 to your hand. This helps Gears because we sort of need the help to search out stuff. His other skill is on discard, you may counterblast one superior college unit from the drop zone in rest and draw a card. Why this card is good is because it makes your discard cost 3. It really works in tandem in Chronojet because of Smoke Gear. Being that Smoke Gear makes all our discards 3, if you have him in a Smoke Gear in hand and Chronojet on that grade 3 turn, this together means a Metallica or a next stage for nothing. Now, I'm also glad it doesn't come in stand, because then this card would kind of be broken. Then, my other grade 1s, I run 3 Wedge Move. When the trial deck comes out, these will actually be turning into Bearing Rovers. They do the exact same thing. They are considered your grade 3 substitute. But Wedge Move binds a card from my hand and draws on hit as a Vanguard. Bearing Rover just discards a card and draws instead. So, it's good. I might go down, but as of right now, 3 have been actually kind of useful. Then, my last grade 1, sorry guys, is going to be 2 Momente. Now, Momente is actually really strong in this deck. Reason being, her skill works in perfect tandem with Smoke Gear Dragon. Her skill is whenever you ride a unit, while she's on the field, you have the opportunity to draw a card, and if you do, discard a card. And if it's a grade 3, you can give 3 units +5. Now, because if Smoke Gear is on the field, her skill will proc every time. Why I use this card is to play in tandem with Chronojet on the next stage turns, which happens after my second grade 3 turn most often not, since I somehow end up first all the time. She literally gives you +15 to your board. 10 of it usually is going to be straight in the column she's behind, to the Chronojet column, while the remaining 5 goes to either her column or rear guard to help people hit. But with her, this deck actually goes up in power to the point of sometimes being really difficult to handle, but still only run 2 because outside of that skill, she doesn't really help. And being that format's not really retire heavy yet, you don't need to really see her more than twice. Now, for you Gear Chronicle players, you might be wondering why I have not run Quickie Worker in this build. Being that the deck draws a lot and how next stage works, you don't really need Quickie Worker in this deck because she sort of hurts your soul. You really need your soul for your Smoke Gear, for your Strooboscope Dragons. That's where your soul's really reliant on. You don't really need Quickie. If next stage didn't work well as couldn't be just rode on, then I might run Quickie. But since you can just ride into next stage on the following turn after you've been on Chronojet, there is no problem anywhere. Now on into my triggers. I do run 8 crits. I run 6 regular crit and 2 of the crit Sentinel unit. Now, being this, that means you guys know I'm only running 2 draw PGs. Now, my reasoning for this is because Heart Thump Worker and the Sentinel crits in general honestly open up flexibility for decks. My deck draws enough to validate me not needing to run 4 PGs. As well as the decks that are coming out, their numbers are so big, your hand can't afford to waste a guard. So, with these, you don't actually waste the guard that you would normally have occur when you would use a PG to guard. Because not every guard needs to be guarded with a PG. And one of these guys is actually sometimes a better use of your hand than a PG. Because you only need to drop the one card to guard something instead of having to use up 2 cards. And that's why I do that. However, I still do run 2 draw PGs and then 2 regular draw triggers. You still want the 4 draw in deck, but like I said, you don't really need the PG to help because this deck still needs to keep its hand under control, and having to drop 2 cards on a guard when 1 card can survive is not really beneficial. And then last but not least, I do just have my 4 heal. When the Trial deck comes out, my heals will be switched over to all Chrono related triggers for this build, and those will turn into Alurus. Overall, this deck actually works really, really well. I have a consistent win-loss ratio with it. More often than not, most of my games, I usually win 2 out of the 3 games unless the deck moves faster than me. I'm more often or not are going to come out on top as long as I outplay my opponent. If you don't outplay, this deck can stall out and you can lose with it. Will I say it's top tier? No. I most likely give it a 1.5 on tier list or really high tier 2. Wouldn't say tier 1, but I'd still say it is competitive enough. So that's the deck, guys. If you have any questions, please like, comment, subscribe down below. And all the proxies you see in this deck are actually courtesy of Team Top Deck Heroes. If you go to their YouTube channel, guys, they actually do have a Google Drive with all proxies of all new sets up to a certain point that have not been actually released out to us yet. Say hi to them. Say Team OTK sent you over there. And see you in the next video, guys. Later.